All right, class. So the day before I go to bed, because I've been working, I don't know, 12, 14 hours, we're going to be discussing League of Legends real quick. I'm going to try to keep this simple. It's just going to be the basics. Now, when it comes to like your own personal champion that you're going to be playing, your role that you're going to be playing, all that stuff, I'm going to leave that up to you to learn. Master your champion, figure out your build path, your item spikes, all that stuff. But, you know that saying that League is life? It's kind of true. And then what is life about, right? Well, a lot of people in life, they want experiences, they want money, um, and you don't get back wasted time. And in League of Legends, we want XP, we want gold, we want time, I guess. And that's basic League in a nutshell. Now there was a day back in the day where I was a younger man, and you could climb really high in League just with your champion skill, just with your pure raw champion strength and how good you could play it. But back then, kills and stuff were a lot better than they seem to be now. So this is where we're getting kind of into the gameplay here, and we might hop in for a quick little thing. But this is the map. You have 3 lanes. We're going to be breaking this down a little bit. So mid lane is the safest lane, the shortest lane. Uh, People that would probably be farming here, like if you're going to play champions like AP caster mages and stuff, assassins, even like AD carries would be in the mid lane because it's shorter and they can make it safely back, right? And then these side lanes are a lot longer, which means that champions that don't have a lot of mobility or protection or self-sustain will have more issues here because they can get caught out and chased down and not be able to get away, which is partially why you need a support in bot lane and why top lane is kind of an island where these two are by themselves. And what this breaks down to is that these lanes, it can vary based on your opponent, but you have a lot of melee champions in top lane, which is why top lane is very difficult if you're playing a melee champion. And trading and lowering someone else's life total is more important than CS up here half the time, because killing them will get you more CS or weaken them enough for a gank or something to come through. Mid lane, AP caster mages and things like this tend to be better at wave clear as the game goes on, and their whole thing is that they can clear out waves really quick. So if your team gets killed and you have an AP caster mage or something around, usually they can clear out the minions and keep the enemies from being able to progress the game a whole lot, and they poke a lot. And then your ADC and your support down here, your ADC is your primary DPS, your damage dealer. That's good for taking down turrets, good for taking map objectives and stuff around the map. All that stuff is good. Now, when it comes to this map, the mid turrets, these are the most important turrets on the map. And then when it comes to inhibitors, these 3 that are in the base, the outer 2 inhibitors are the most important inhibitors on the map. And this is because the statues in the middle are guarding the center of the map, which if you ever played chess, controlling the center gives you a lot of flexibility on the map. If you have these open, all it does is open up a little bit of this jungle right here on the edge. If you have these open, it opens up both sides of the jungle on these edges, right? Now, so these turrets here are more important than these external turrets, and then these inhibitors on the outside are more important than the inhibitor on the inside. And this is because the outside inhibitors put pressure down the long side of the lane, and these are the farthest away from these other objectives that are in the river. And it also takes a longer amount of time for somebody farming those side lanes to make it across the map to any of these objectives, which gives you an advantage in a fight. The next big things are that Baron, which spawns, is more important than inhibitors because a Baron buff, one, is giving you golden stuff for your team, and these are like time limited. So you can get 1, 2, 3 Barons or whatever in a game, which means more and more gold. There's only one tower, but the Baron buff kills towers. You don't have to put your team at risk if you have a Baron buff, because the Baron buff can kill towers. You don't have to put your team at risk to end the game if you have all these inhibitors down, because the Baron buff plus the super minions is usually enough to just run over anybody that's at the Nexus. So that's the most important thing there. Now, dragons and things at the beginning of the game do give your team and stuff gold, which is nice, but if your team is really far behind and getting creamed on the map, dragon isn't important because you're just going to die from a team fight, and instead people should just farm these lanes, push the lanes out, try to get these towers and stuff, and bait these guys away from dragon, because then your jungle can either take these camps from the enemy jungle, or baiting their team away from dragon makes it easier for your own jungler or something to steal the dragon that's there. But also, if you're behind, taking extra dragons away from your enemy slows down Elder Dragon. And slowing down Elder Dragon gives you more time to get back into the game. So anytime you can sneak a dragon when you're behind and the enemy team has 2 or 3 dragons, you don't want them to get Elder. It's best just to like steal a dragon, keep Elder off the field. Now, likewise, if you are really ahead and you're starting to throw the game, and say both of you have, 3 dragons, or you have 2 dragons and they have 3 dragons, sometimes it's better just not to take the dragon, just so Elder doesn't get on the field and your enemy team can't grab it for some reason. That's kind of getting a little bit more into some details. Now, when you think about League, I want you to think about what if you couldn't kill your enemies. Let's say neither side could kill each other. How do you win the game? So no matter who you're facing or anything else, how do you win the game? How do you kill the enemy? And it comes down to the minions. So the first bit of the game, let's say, minions spawn every 30 seconds. The first like 5-6 minutes of the game, or however long the early game is, the CS doesn't really matter a ton. Like, it is important, but dying and losing experience is going to be a lot worse. After 15 minutes, the CS becomes a lot more important, and so does map control. So 15 minutes is a big deal for getting more CS. The first part of the game, it isn't as big of a deal to be down in CS a little bit. And then the other times to really be considered about is that jungle at the very beginning of the game, some champions try to like level 2 attack lanes, so they'll be there in the first couple of minutes, like 1 or 2 minutes. If you have a jungle doing like a full clear or whatever, and these scuttle crabs are in the river, around 3:30 is the important part here. And essentially, if you're fighting in a lane and you can't kill your opponent, how you win the game is you want to manipulate the minion wave to make a big minion wave, push it into the enemy turret, and then that frees you up to fight over these extra camps. Let's say everyone is 100% CS efficient, everyone gets the exact same gold, no one can kill each other. The only difference that's going to make any difference in the gold value that your team gets are these river jungle camps. And the safest way to get those river jungle camps is to coordinate with your team, push up the lane, and then free this lane to help you take that camp. So if your top lane and your mid lane both have their waves up into this turret on both sides, they can help 3-man this scuttle. And if the enemy laners try to respond, they lose those waves of experience, which will put them behind the other laner. So the experience early is a lot more important than the gold. Now, the next point is when you come to the lane at the very beginning of the game and the first wave shows up, there's basically 3 things that you're looking for as a champion going up against another champion. And that is the experience that you gain and when you're going to level up. So level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Every level that you get before your opponent gives you raw power and stats that your opponent doesn't have, which helps you win the fight. And then every item that you buy with the gold that you get gives you more power than the enemy champion that you're fighting and can help you win games that way. And then the other thing that you're looking for is your minion wave is like an extra ability on your champion. So if you have a big minion wave and you're pushing into your opponent, you have a lot more damage than they do if y'all get into a big fight, and the minions are body blocking you from big skill shots. As well as your enemy might waste abilities on the minion wave to try and thin it, which gives you a chance to attack them. So that's a big one. Then when we come to like vision control, maximizing the total amount of vision that you can see on the map helps the most. So like if you ward somewhere, like you're going to ward right here, this path, you can ward in this bush to give you bush vision and path from here and here and be able to see someone walk across this area. You can also put the ward over here and you can see this area, that area, up into the camp and stuff. Or you can put a ward over this wall and you'd be able to see this camp, that camp, anyone walking here, and maybe a little bit there. So there's ways to maximize your vision, but if you put like a ward over this wall, you're only going to see this one path. So you want to put wards in places that can maximize the total amount of vision that you can get on the map. Now, the lane manipulation for like waves, we're probably going to have to go in game to kind of show a little bit of it, maybe the practice tool. trying to think if there's anything else that I can really think of. Um, for the most part. So these primary objectives, ideally you want to get there early and control the vision around these river objectives. And when you fight, you're not really fighting for kills necessarily. You don't need to kill people. You're trying to waste people's time. So if you can get someone low health and keep yourself healthy, then they may be forced to go back to base, which opens up the map for you to do other things. Or if you keep them low for a long period of time, they may lose farm under these turrets because they can't risk dying, so they're slowly losing farm. And then it can be better to keep them low than actually to kill them sometimes. But it also opens them up for you to build a bigger wave and then kill them so that they miss all of that CS and stuff, which is pretty good. But when it comes to these dragon camps and things, it weakens their team if you can make them poke them down while they're trying to contest these dragons and stuff. So if you have vision around here, you don't have to immediately take the camp. They can come and you can poke them down and lower their health totals before a fight even begins. And then by the time it actually does begin, you can just win because they're already low. So there's a number of things like that. Also, these minion waves spawning every 30 seconds or whatever to get to lane. That's also a similar amount of time it takes you to travel from here to get into lane. So that's a big deal. And then so that's good to keep note of, especially when it comes to the dragon. Like if you need to be there like 20, 30 seconds early and it spawns at like, 5 minutes or something and it's like 4:30 right now, you're looking at a 9-second recall or whatever to get back to base and then a 30-second walk to get up there. So that's good information to know in general as well. The other thing is that it helps you put a timer in your head for when you kill an enemy champion, knowing that it's going to take them about that long to get back, so you know kind of when to back and how much time that you have before they collapse on you and stuff again. There's a few other things like uh, I keep trying to think on this. If you have to back, like say mid lane, if you're really low on health and you're going to lose farm and probably die, but you have enough gold to where you can actually buy boots, like an upgraded tier 2 boot, you can hold in lane until a cannon wave arrives and they crash it into your tower and back, and then use the speed from those boots to get back into lane so you don't miss that much gold, and then continue fighting in the lane. But having a big minion wave when you collapse into things also keeps your champion safe. It wants people from the other team to come and build up and collect that gold, so it frees up parts of the map. If they don't collect the gold, they're behind anyway, so you don't really have to do anything. I feel like there was something else that I was going to cover. Um, I can't think of it off the top of my head, though. We got onto the topic of boots and vision control. Thinking. Hmm. I don't know. In any case, the jungle is basically like your team leader. Support is kind of like your second in command, and then your mid lane and your ADC are kind of like your rocks, or what, like these lanes are kind of your rocks, but like that's going to be a gist of kind of how these things operate for the most part. Um, let's see if we can go into the Training tool or custom practice tool. I'll just pick a champion that we know. So when we look at this, certain champions are strong early game, certain champions are strong mid game, and everything else. So eventually you'll learn what champions are strong and fall off late, and what champions are weak and then get stronger as the game goes on. So you're looking at like things like Nasus or Vigar with like AP scaling or AD scaling, and then you have like Lee Sin, Draven, uh, Darius, stuff like that. That's stronger early game. Also, these plates that are on the turret are not overly important. If you end up like dying for those or overstaying in lane, it's kind of a big deal, and that's going to cost you a lot of suffering. Basically, put you behind. Also, destroying a turret doesn't necessarily have that. Like, you don't have to force that half the time. You can just, if you're ahead, you can milk the enemy laners for as much as possible if you have the time to do it. So just letting more and more waves crash and then take this tower over time can be good. But also, you can freeze the wave right here if you're really strong, and then just zone the enemy off if you're stronger than them to where they can't get any farm and they're completely out of the game. And the only way for them to really fix it is to bring a jungler in or some other person and try to break the freeze. So there's a lot of ways to punish an enemy that messes up. But if you're not like if you're playing a range matchup, it's a little bit more forgiving. It's a little bit harder for them to like abuse you. If you're playing a melee champion, a lot of times you can't fight over this. But see, these two waves are the first wave coming in. So whatever people are in the wave first and start attacking and lowering these minions, even if you don't get the CS, will end up getting level 2 first. And this isn't a normal bot lane, so I'm getting more experience than I would be. But the gold is good, but the level 2 spike gives you more power. So like this minion right here, when it dies, you go right into level 2, and then you're already fighting the enemy. You get all your abilities, you're fighting the enemy, and you get all your abilities. Then you can force them, trade them, get them low, and then push a wave into the turret. And then just say that we backed or whatever. We went and backed. And now we bought an item. We're going to be coming back to lane. So now this wave is on their side. And they're going to be killing our minions. And we'll be losing a little bit of gold here. But this wave is going to grow on this side and push into us. But we're back to wave. We lost 3 minions. And now we're back here. But if the cannon minion was here, and you waited for a cannon wave, you wouldn't be losing nearly as much farm. So now if you wanted to manipulate the wave, like say you don't have a lot of minions or whatever, you can use your body to manipulate the minions to grow them on one side and push them the other direction, which is some stuff that supports need to know when their ADC dies and stuff like that. If you can manipulate the minion wave to keep your ADC from losing experience, it's a big deal. But see, like this is crashing here, so like if you're a support, you can zone these off and do this for your ADC while they're dead. And freezing waves like this in front of the turret has them kill your minions quick. so the enemy laners can't farm. But if you have too many, you'll end up taking damage from them. But even if you're like a support, you can just come over here, pull them to the bush, pull them to the bush, and then just keep having them come and kill the wave. But you only need about 4 of these to keep this going. Like 4 extra casters. So we can pull them back up. But you only need about 4. Now, if you were zoning somebody off and they weren't able to come farm from you, you can do that. But then you can break the freeze. So now we have a few more minions than they do. Our wave is going to be building up. And now we are slow pushing into them. And this is how, when I used to play top lane Thresh back in the day, I would end up destroying everybody because I had so many more minions than them that they couldn't fight me. So now we have like a wave and a half. And then this is the cannon wave. So this would be where you would hard push right here. If you had an ADC or whatever with you, use hard push. Try to get it under turret. And then you can back and go back to base. And this will take longer to kill. Or if your ADC on the enemy side or whatever's low, and you have you and your ADC, maybe the support's dead or they're both low or whatever, you can come in, walk up to people, turret dive them underneath here, no problem, and then look at the plate damage that the minions do when you have those big waves. So that's how you set up a turret dive. That's how you take plates and stuff without putting yourself more at risk. And also, when you have a bigger wave like that, even if a jungler comes in, they usually don't have enough damage to come and kill you if you're setting in this big wave because it does so much damage. Now, there's something else that I was going to say there. I got to think about it for a second. Big wave. Turret. Yeah, there's some information that I just lost in the sauce right there, to be honest. The, oh yeah. Okay, so we're going to build up another wave and we'll kind of showcase what's going on here. So, as long as your enemies have not left the wave, if they're in lane and they never leave, you're basically on the same footing. But as soon as you get like a level advantage on an enemy, you should have more damage or ability unless like they're very specific champions that you need to outscale. And if you have more health than them from trades, they're at risk of losing a big minion wave. So say like we're building this wave up right here, and we start building up a bigger and bigger minion wave to push in. if the enemy is low, or if they back really back, you have to like hard push and try to keep them from backing to keep them in lane. All right, so like let's say that they left, you want to keep them from backing and then get back in lane. So you do all that and you'd back. But you see, the other thing that we're looking for is that this gold that we have, just like our experience, is useless if we don't come back here and buy items, right? So every time that you back, you buy items that give you an advantage in the lane. Now, if you have a big wave here and you've kept them in lane and you have it under their tower, they're going to be trying to farm that as you're coming back. And potentially, if they don't get it done fast enough, you'll get back with items, which let you kill your enemy. But also, let's say that we had a big wave built up here. We had, 2 or 3 minion waves built up. Or we have something that we want to do that's nearby, like dragon or something. You can hard push the wave in, and this buys you time to go and take resources off the map, place wards, get rid of blast cones, place this, help secure scuttle crab, help take dragon or whatever. And then this is going to come back to your turret, but you don't really have to worry about this at all until it gets back over here. So if your support or whatever is gone and you're an ADC, the support needs to be back before this wave gets in this area over here, but the ADC doesn't need to be up here by themselves trying to deal with 2 or 3 potential players and a big minion wave, because then they're going to end up dying and you're going to be over here by yourself without an ADC. But let's say that you left this as support, your ADC went up here and died, and this minion wave was coming. All you have to do is keep the minion wave in front of the turret. And you can just sit here and face tank it or whatever else. And that makes it to where they can come back and get their experience in gold, which is pretty big. Now, if you're a melee champion and you're against another melee champion, whoever gets the level 2 first and the level 3 first and the level 4 first is going to have a big advantage in a fight. But if you're like a melee champion against some ranged champions, then whoever gets those levels first is probably going to be the ranged champion. And as such, as a melee champion, your goal is basically to not die and not take a ton of damage. And then the ranged champion will end up pushing all the minions into your turret. And then from there, you can grow a minion wave, let them burn their mana and stuff trying to poke you, and then come out with a big minion wave and engage them in this lane or crash it into their side and be fine. And then you will catch up on levels as the minion wave is coming over here. But as a melee champion, you want to be able to catch them and like lower their health, and then get them really low underneath the turret or something. But everything in the game is going to come down to just pushing the waves back and forth, Not chasing kills. You want to take these scuttle crabs, dragons, heralds, grubs, pretty much everything else that you can think of. And now 2 grubs is better than 1 dragon, but 2 dragons is better than 2 grubs. Baron is better than dragon. Dragon and Baron are potentially better than turrets. Mid turrets are better than side turrets. And then side inhibitors are better than mid inhibitor, is generally how this stuff is going. But the more that you get these XP leads, these gold leads, the damage leads on an enemy champion, the better. And also, when you're trying to carry a game, this is what gets enemy junglers and other champions to try and shut you down in a lane, which means they're going to have a harder fight, and you don't have to engage in those fights. Just them leaving their lanes to come and try and deal with you is opening up your teammates to come back into a game, or also, potentially get ahead in the game as well. And that is how you start transitioning over to like a solo carry versus like a team ranked game. So like if you're in a high elo team game and you have a bunch of, people that you know and that you're playing with, you can game, you can plan, you can organize, you can have a lot of stuff. And then that kind of looks like this, where the general game plan is where an ADC and support will farm down here in bot lane until they're pretty strong or get this turret. And then the mage up here in top lane will get pretty strong to where they can farm or get this turret. But by the time they're like level 5 or whatever, the mages and stuff should be able to clear out waves pretty quickly. So then they would swap down here to bot lane because they're going to be able to clear these waves out before they crash to the turret and play relatively safe in the bot lane. And then the ADC and the support get access to the mid lane, which is closer to both sides of the turret and potential team fights. And the support also gets more vision control in the middle of the map as well, and also more vision control on these dragons and things. And then top lane is just top lane. In general, they're kind of like their own little island, and top lane can snowball way harder than all the other lanes because how difficult the lane can be. But when you're in solo queue, you don't really have the teammates like you do when you're playing in like a flex game or with a group of friends. So essentially what's happening is, to win more in solo queue, you have to be able to take on multiple people of the enemy team or distract multiple people from the enemy team and focus on objectives and free up your other allies to do basically a 4v3 on the rest of the map. So you want to be able to take on 2 or 3 players of the enemy team by yourself and force them to come deal with you in solo queue. And that's going to free up your teammates to do other things and make more plays and be better in the game and help you win. Which won't be all the time, but more often than not, it's probably going to be better odds if you can take on 2 of the enemy teammates by yourself. The other thing is like pressing tab. So the champion, if they're strong early or mid game, the ruin, if it's strong early or mid game, the summoners, if it's strong early or, late game or whatever, the items. So item advantage, every time someone gets an item or a component, um, the strength level comes up. If people aren't spending their gold or if they haven't leveled up yet, that is basically a weakness that can be exploited against the enemy champion. So if you have more levels, if you have more gold spent, then you can end up beating people easier. And then when you're going to do these dragon fights and everything else, you want to come and you want to spend your gold, and then you want to go out to support and roam or to jungle gank and then go and get your camps afterwards after you get your item spikes and your levels. Essentially, let's say you were a jungle and you farmed your camps, you got your first item like I do now or whatever, and you come back into the game and you see that, oh, there's some stuff going on. Well, we're getting into like mid game, so we need to start rolling. We start making some plays and stuff. We know this guy's low or whatever. You can come in, hit the mid lane, hit somebody, gank them pretty hard. You don't have to worry about the kill as long as you get them like half health or something. Give them a disadvantage in the lane to where your allied laner can easily deal with them afterwards. And then you can go farm your camps up and do something. Or you can go and secure a dragon. Like, say we just came out of base. We all just bought items. We all just came out of base for full health. We spent all of our gold, so we're at the highest strength that we possibly can. We come up here as a team, you know, 30 seconds before the dragon fights or whatever. We place these wards, deep vision in the enemy jungle, and then the dragon's going to spawn. The enemies are coming. They don't come as a team. They don't work together to clear these wards or anything like that. One of y'all come out, burst an enemy down, or get them low health. You hit a couple of them 2 or 3 times, you get them low health, get them low health. Then you can start peeling back and start focusing more on the dragon. And then if they want to continue that fight, they're all going to be low health, and then you have a better chance of winning. And if they don't want to continue that fight, you get the dragon, and then they're either going to stay on the map and try to get these camps and stuff, or these lanes and still be low so y'all can get done and go kill them, or they're going to go back to base, which frees up you to be able to go to these lanes and take these turrets or take these other objectives and camps, and then you can go back to base afterwards and have more gold value and experience value than they did from just going back to base. So it's really just a gold experience item type of game, back and forth, back and forth. And then your skill level and all that stuff on top of it just kind of matters. But also, as a solo carry, you don't have to group up with your team and fight over these dragons and stuff, because let's say that you're a top laner or an ADC or something. Um, yes, the general game plan is that an ADC should probably come to mid and be here for all these objectives and fights and stuff, but it's not an organized team. And like we said, mid laners can be very good at clearing waves and things. So if your ADC is mid lane and they're going up against a mid laner, they can't apply their pressure to the turret if the mid laner is constantly clearing the wave out. So unless your team is able to collect and deal with this mid laner, you're not going to be able to get this mid turret. You're not going to be able to take control of the mid lane pressure. But if you have that ADC in a side lane, you could potentially bait multiple champions from the enemy team to come over. This goes for top, mid, whatever you got, jungle, doesn't really matter. If you're solo climbing, you need the experience, you need the gold, you need the pressure. And so any champion, like even this Thresh, potentially, if my Thresh was strong enough um, to fight, it's a little bit harder on some supports, but if my Thresh was strong enough to push these side lanes and win, you could do this. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily strength in the sense of my champion is like raw power, able to take on any champion out there. You have the minion waves that you can manipulate to make a massive minion wave to give you more damage than you otherwise would. But also, it's just being up here and clearing these out. Like you doing this on a Thresh, and then the enemy jungle or like the mid laner or something wants to come up here and try and kill you, and you just run off, and they can't really do anything. Well, they just traded, a DPS champion for like a support. But if you're a top laner and you're pretty scary and you do a bunch of damage, If they send one person up here to deal with you, potentially you're just going to be able to kill them. And then if they send two people or three people up here to deal with you, your teammates can do anything else that they want on the map. And that's basically how you carry as like a solo carry and solo queue. It's just getting so much gold and so much experience and so much map pressure that your opponents just can't effectively deal with you until they just lose the game. Because if you're solo carrying and you start like, you know, caring about dragons and all that stuff, you can win with your team, but you're putting yourself into a 5v5. And in that sense, if your teammates suck bad enough, they're going to end up dying, and then you're going to end up in like a 1v5 situation or a 1v3 or 1v4, and it's not really going to be super effective for you to like carry a game if you have to be able to guarantee that you're better than everyone else on the other team, compared to like needing to say that you're better than one or two. And then also just itemization as well. Like let's say that they have a Zerath mid, they have a Trinomir top, they have a Rengar jungle, and they have like an ADC or whatever, and you're a top laner. You could potentially even be like a tank top lane, like a Malphite or something. You know that, Zerath, he has skill shots. You can potentially dodge his skill shots. He's fairly squishy, whatever. Trinomir, he's like an 80 champion. Uh, uh, Bringar is an 80 champion for the most part. ADC is an 80 champion. So you can itemize like armor items and be able to deal with 90% of whatever they send at you, besides maybe the Zerath, which they could send to like come clear a wave or something. But you can build a wave up, send it down here, and then go to a different wave or whatever. And Zerath is more vulnerable because he's a caster, that he can't just like come walk down the wave by himself. Like anyone in your team should be able to come and like sweep up that Zerath for free money, like your jungle or anything else. Like you don't have to be the one to kill that Zerath. He's putting himself in a vulnerable situation that someone else on your team can capitalize on. And that's pretty much the same with all of these. But you can see this game has been going on. We haven't been doing a whole lot. Just been farming, getting experience, all that stuff. Haven't even really been going back and buying items because we don't need to worry about tempo right now. But we managed to get 3 towers just with minions, kind of passively. And our towers have taken pretty minimal damage. But the thing is with these towers as well, so like after I think 15 minutes, um, the towers are not meant to be permanent structures. They're meant to fall over time. So this external tower, I think it's 15 minutes. Like once gold starts picking up, the towers, these external ones, are meant to go down. So even if you took a tower early, you don't have to die or kill yourself for this tower. You can give this tower up for a different objective. You can trade it like chess. So like they're going to take this tower, but you're going to be able to take second tower on the side lane. That's fine. They want to take this tower, but you're going to take dragon or whatever on the side. That's fine. You know, this is something that doesn't have to exist. And then this is something later on that isn't really as important, and then this one becomes less important, but this is probably the most important turret. But all these are as time gates that are keeping your opponents from being able to win the game in a certain period of time unless they absolutely force it and your team does nothing about it. But these are also really effective, just like teammates that you can use if you're being pushed in pretty hard and you can't really do anything. When it comes to the spirit guy, I don't know jack all about this dude, but what I will say is that apparently this plant, if you attack these, they give you these little souls things, and then this says Give your entire team bloody petals, granting XP and permanent adaptive force, which seems pretty big to me. Whatever this is, this new thing, I mean, that seems pretty huge. And then I'm assuming because this thing does permanent damage and adaptive force or whatever when you kill it, it's pretty big. But this reminds me of like an MMO boss, and I think that's what they're doing with it. So like you can dodge its abilities for the most part, which is pretty interesting. But it has like one AoE ability that's super strong. But the adaptive thing is probably pretty interesting. These plants seem pretty interesting. So like roaming supports even, this seems like a pretty big deal. It feels like. But I also think that if you do have a lot of fights on your side of the map, that this thing is potentially pretty useful because like if I don't care about stealing that early game, if we know a jungle's coming or anything else, like you can just come over here and like smack it and then just like run off. And then it would like aggro on the jungle or like the bot lane or something and like do some damage on them. Like it has a pretty decent range. And then also like there's probably some like plays that you could do where you could just like hook onto it with a support or teleport it with Rise or something. It'd be pretty interesting. But I think that's like the bulk of most of the basics that I can think of. Um, I know jungles and stuff. You want like your first item before you like really start trying to spike and play on the map. And then as the game goes on, you want to switch from farming to applying map pressure and then farming and taking over the enemy jungle. ADCs and stuff, like the more scaling ones, usually want like 3 items. AP mid laners, probably they want like 2 or 3 items, probably usually. Supports, I think it just kind of depends on supports and stuff, but there's a number of things. But also like as a support, you don't have to be like XP and gold isn't as valuable on a support. And so you can leave lane whenever like the enemy ADC is killed or whatever. You can leave lane while they're like solo farming or whatever else and put more experience into your ADC so that they're stronger. They have more gold, more experience, more levels. Because your champions are mainly just utility for the most part. But this also is the same thing where it's like if you have a huge minion wave and you're pushing it into an enemy turret and they call in a jungler to gank you and you fight in the minion wave and they happen to kill a bunch of the minions while you're dead or like while you're fighting, they're splitting the experience between the laner and the jungler when that happens, which could technically make, even if you die, could make your enemy laner like have less experience potentially, which would be pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, I think that's the bulk of it. I can't really think of what that one thing was that I forgot, but see if I can think. Because we did level 2 rush, we did range versus melee. Like range, you want like range versus melee. Like the range champion doesn't want to push super hard; they want to abuse the melee so they don't die. And then the melee wants to not take damage until they can get more levels to change it. and fight the mage, because the melee needs distance and levels to apply DPS for damage. Sustain trades. So we did level 2, the level spikes, farming, minion control, and waves. Backing. You need to back and buy items before going and making plays on the map because it can save time, among other things. Also gives you a better chance of not dying when you have, you know, less gold laying around. The importance of different turrets, inhibitors, camps, etc. Um, Travel times from base to lane. How to conserve experience if you have to back. General times to look out for things in the river and stuff. So 3:30 and 15 minutes are two important times. 3:30 for scuttle, like first scuttle and river stuff, and then 15 minutes is like exterior turrets and uh, minion wave gold farming. You don't want to miss minion waves and stuff after that. Getting to river objectives first and applying wards and pressure to the enemy jungle, trying to get jungle control before doing the actual objective, potentially trying to weaken the enemies as they approach the dragon before the fight starts so you can get free damage on them. We talked about lowering enemies' HP being important, not just killing enemies. You don't have to kill them. You can just lower their HP and make their life difficult or free up time for your allies. Some ward stuff. I'd say like if your bot lane, like the sides aren't really equal, but like if there's like a Rek'Sai and or like a Hecarim or a bunch of stuff, like usually this bush that's like right behind where your lane is pretty important. But also like a deep ward in here is pretty big, or like a deep ward on these lanes. If you're going up against like champions like Eve and Shaco, like things that go invisible and stuff, this wards on the camps can show you where they are, and instead of having them like in the lane. And then like if you're mid lane or a jungle or whatever, the Raptor camp, this is a big ward here. So you can see them do raptors and you can see these lanes, or this bush right here is really good because you can see people travel through here. But you can see just the raw power of minions. That was 3 waves, like built up and then going in. Those weren't even super minions. The super minion just got there. Minions are no joke. Most underrated thing in the game. When I played Thresh top, Thresh can't really, like, Thresh should not win against like any champions in top lane, like at all. And yet I was able to beat like Jax, Tryndamere, Riven, all of them in top lane early game and just smear them because I was slowly building minion waves because Thresh doesn't have really good wave clear. So I could only really build slow minion waves, and then they would try to trade with me, and he has so much crowd control that they couldn't really do a whole lot of damage, but the minions would just destroy them for me. But alright, I think that's good for today. I'm gonna hop off and head to bed because it's been like an hour, so you guys have a good one, and we'll see what happens next time.